It's Wednesday. Woo! The Golden Stallion is here for another little, we got a little Patreon Q&A for Wednesday, of course. Per usual. I know sometimes it comes out on Thursday. I think that's only happened like twice, maybe 2-3 times. But anyway, excuse me while I have a little drink here of, this, I'll tell you, Earl Grey tea, but with jasmine in it. Is it Twinnings or Twinings? I don't know how the fuck that's pronounced. But that's the company. They sell it. It's a pretty new thing. Oh, is it good with a little bit of jasmine. I'm usually not like a fan of jasmine green tea or anything. Stephanie loves the shit out of jasmine green tea. I mean, she loves it. Some people even like gifted her the really expensive kind, you know, that comes right from the mountains in Southeast Asia or wherever. And it's good. That like the rarer stuff, you can kind of taste sort of more of the earthiness, almost like a Perrier tea. I really enjoy that. But this jasmine Earl Grey, boy, that's good. I mean, it kills the bergamot a little bit, but yeah, I think it's good. Anyway, love tea Earl Grey hot. Yeah, I know you're waiting for a bald guy that loves Starfleet to say that. Actually, I don't love Starfleet, but that's that's a whole other fucking story. Anyway, because we have plenty of questions to get into. Boy, I'll tell you though. I think I mentioned this last week at some point, or I think it was one during the live Q&A hangouts, which right now it looks like the June Q&A, live Q&A hangout, Google Hangout, is going to be probably next Thursday. I'm recording this on June 7th, 2017, so that would be, I guess, the 15th, because this month has just been, well, the past 3-4 months really have 2017 has been crazy. I mean, like, it's been just nonstop for me. So many different projects I've been working on and that I've had to get done, not just for myself and Sovereign Tech, but for clients and other people. It's really been a hell of a, I mean, it's been a tasking time. And pretty much right now, my thoughts are, okay, I just got to make it past, I think I said this on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode this week. I just got to make it past, PorcFest, and then everything will be fine. but I got to make it past that. So anyway, I did upgrade my. Yeah, I mentioned this, that I upgraded my Dell 7559 with with a solid state drive. Man, like, I'm still not 100%. Like, there's still a part of me in the back of my head that is terrified of solid state drives. Like, the fact that you can't run things like SpinRite on them necessarily to repair them. I mean, SpinRite still has uses with solid state drives. I know that, but the fact that you can't repair them so easily, data loss, the limited read writes and all that. And I know there's incredible, like, with NVMe and all that, a lot of this stuff is kind of getting resolved, but there's still a part of me that really holds back from getting one. But then when you do, and your laptop weighs like 2 pounds lighter, it feels like, and it's so much quieter. That's almost the biggest thing. The biggest sell for me with SSDs isn't even so much the speed, even though the speed's been phenomenal. And I mean, like, it's crazy just how much faster this little machine's running now. With a full M2 SSD in it. But the quietness, like, I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older. I mean, I'm 36, but, I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, but I want everything to be so quiet. Like, I don't want to hear a goddamn thing. And, at least when I'm not listening to metal. And, it's just that is such a big selling point for the thing to be so quiet and to not hear that tick, and all that other stuff. Because it seems like, I think hard drives, even smaller hard drives, like, they're so high capacity now, they're jamming in so many platters on the hard drives that, like, it can't help but make a noise. It used to be the theory used to go, this is how well and how thick, hard drives used to be, that you wouldn't really hear them making a sound. Like, you couldn't really hear it. And it's when they started to make a sound that you knew they were bad. Now, like, all hard drives just make a shit ton of noise. Or all traditional hard drives make a shit ton of noise because they're just jamming in so many terabytes, into this ancient technology that, it kind of can't help it. But boy, that's the big selling point for SSDs with me. Though I was looking, so my Dell 7559 actually has, and this was really nice because one of the things I was researching for it, like, I didn't do a hard drive upgrade out of the gate, but it has a 2.5 inch slot, and that's where the traditional, well, is a hybrid drive. The hybrid drive that it came with was in. And then it has a separate M2 slot. Now, I thought the M2 slot was underneath the 2.5 inch slot, but no, the M2 slot, which is, these things are so small. Folks, I'll tell you, anyway, well, okay, let me finish the sentence. Like it was an awesome setup. And so I could load in like another 2.5 inch drive. And like I was even looking, I was like, okay, what do they got? Now, granted, I was looking at traditional hard drives because if I'm ever going to put, like it's a 1 terabyte SSD, if I was ever going to put in another hard drive, like I want maximum amount of storage. And they have 2.5 inch, like 5 terabyte drives from Seagate for $200 on Amazon. I put one in my wish list, a wish list at zog.ninja. But I mean, holy shit, like that's nuts. You know, and only $200. Like, that's almost worth hearing the noise when you know you have that much space in there. I mean, I could put, my entire music collection, a bunch of which is very sizable, mind you, amongst other things. Boy, I could talk about my music collection for a while because I've been really, really having a lot of trouble trying to find a good home for that. And I mean, putting it on my Synology, on my NAS, like that's been pretty nice. But there's I don't like the options that are out there. There's a lot of flaws going across the board. Anyway, the point I was going to say, the funny comment I was going to make about M2 drives is that when you look at an M.2 drive, when this is just a crazy thought, okay, take it with a grain of salt. But when I used to talk about years ago on Sovereign Tech, when I said, it's like, if an advanced civilization, say 15,000, 20,000, or even 100,000 years ago, was on Earth, an advanced, Homo sapien style civilization was here, and say they advanced to the level that we're at now, and they had been advanced to that level for a while to where everything was either augmented reality or all of, all the data that they had as a civilization was being stored on hard drives and all that stuff. This was before M.2 drives were like even a big deal. Like when you look at an M.2 drive and how much information that can hold, well, it's no fucking wonder you can't find any evidence of a civilization that existed 100,000 years ago because they probably stored it on shit so small that like you'd never find it and it would biodegrade in a heartbeat. So, or at least I mean, after 1,000 years, I can't see why it would survive. I mean, it's just remarkable just how the amount of data that's getting stored and how small, so many of our devices are today. It's really incredible. So anyway, just a side note there. But I mean, really, you look at an M.2 drive and you're like, yeah, that's the future. I mean, it looks like a fucking isolinear chip off the Enterprise. I mean, it's just, it's crazy. And you can buy ones that are more than 1 terabyte. Wow. So anyway, yeah, I've had M.2 drives before. It's just like it really impressed me just how slick this went in, and you really get the sense of, okay, this is how you can make these laptops so goddamn slim these days. Not that my 7559 is really that slim, but okay, let's get into the questions. Sorry, I hope I didn't bore you with all that little bit of shop talk, but. Here we go. Let's see. I got a couple of questions that are kind of related, and then I'm going to get into another question that was sort of bouncing off of that. I guess I'll start off with the one I want to talk about. We're going to talk. It seems like it's been happening every week. We have not a lot of tech stuff to talk about. We're just going to open up a little bit of tech stuff and it's a little bit of blockchain, and then we'll get into some other things. Got a hell of a story that I have lined up, at least right now, for this week, where The Guardian was pretty much saying that crypto anarchism is the future, and that like this right wing populism and all that, like that, it's just. Like it's going to go the way of the dodo eventually because, crypto anarchism is effectively going to take over. And I thought that was amazing, which spoke very well. And I'll mention this in Sovereign Tech if I get to the story that, in episode 200 of Sovereign Tech, I came right out and said that like the open source movement, the crypto movement and all that, we've won. Like it's really over. Everything else is just death throes. Like anything that Microsoft's doing, anything that, Google's doing or whatever, like it's all death throes. It's and anything the government tries to do to legislate against it, it's death throes. Like I read that Guardian article about crypto anarchism, which was amazing to see the term crypto. Just like we talked about in last week's Sovereign Tech, it was amazing to see what was a global ANCAP revolution. That was in a story from the Atlantic. For the Guardian to even talk about crypto anarchism was mind boggling to me. I was like, whoa. But also, I mean, admittedly, that article was describing what was also in episode 200, which was the leaked from The Intercept, the leaked Pentagon video that was talking about, like, I don't think it was the year 2020, it was like the year 2024 or something. I'm gonna talk a bit about what I talked about in episode 200 in the upcoming episode of Sovereign Tech, because like I think it's so relevant that finally the rest of, the rest of the media is finally catching on that all of this is really really a thing. So, but we've already known that we've won, and part of the reason we've won is cryptocurrencies. I've said this many times that, like things like Dark Android and a lot of the things we want to do wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the ability to store money in a cryptographic, decentralized fashion. And, that being with cryptocurrencies, obviously. So a couple to talk about here. One is, let's see. Well, I'll start. So I was going to talk about MaidSafe and Dash. I guess the first one I'll talk about is MaidSafe. Let me, let's start off with that, even though Dash might have been the more pertinent about it. Let me read actually the question from the person. Let's see. I'm wondering if you can comment on your current opinion of MaidSafe. I was high on it initially and on your suggestion. However, with Paige, of course, that being Paige Peterson herself, and we love Paige Peterson on Sovereign Tech, leaving and stuff like, Paige leaving and stuff like these sources coming out. And there's a link that was sent that was from an ex-engineer, software engineer, contracted to MaidSafe, who raises a bunch of varying concerns. I am beginning to have some doubts. So yeah, I share those doubts with you. In fact, it's a pity because I think it was about a year ago, like maybe almost to the month, when they announced their alpha or beta or something along those lines. I remember in TechCrunch, and I was very excited about it. One of my concerns at the time that I thought was supposed to be a very short-term resolution, as far as I know, is still going on. It's not something that they've completely walked away from. And that is, DigitalOcean offers what they call droplets, which are these like, it's a small selection of system resources that can be cheaply rented out to operate like a server. It's not just like a server. It's very different. But anyway, it's a pretty, like, DigitalOcean offers some pretty cool technologies, droplets included. But they're still sticking with those. And as long as they're using droplets, it's not the distributed peer-to-peer decentralized technology, because it's actually using effectively a server as a backend, which that's the whole point of MaidSafe, is to get rid of servers entirely. Now, I think getting rid of servers is still possible. In fact, it's possible without MaidSafe. Like, I mean, there's other technologies that could be used, to achieve this kind of thing. Now, it's not going to do kind of the sandbox trick that is really what makes MaidSafe so interesting. The sandbox trick being that, and apparently they have a patent on this, is the ability to, which having the patent's kind of concerning in itself, but whatever. MaidSafe's, what it's supposed to be able to do is that it takes whatever system resources, like you would install the MaidSafe client on your computer, okay, and maybe in the future it'd even work on phones or something, right? You would install it onto your computer, and then you would tell the client that you install, the software you install, you would tell it how much system resources, like maybe how many cores, how much RAM, how much hard drive space, etc., that you want to offer to MaidSafe, okay? And then it would use that to bolster the safe network. Within the hard drive space that you give it, it would store varying bits of data. It wouldn't store anything in its complete form. Like torrents, you kind of store things in their complete form and then you just distribute it around, okay? But you wouldn't store any data in its complete form. Like say it was a movie file or something. You'd only have bits and pieces of the movie file. You wouldn't have the whole thing, but the whole thing would exist, on the entire safe network, on everybody's computers, right? But nobody would effectively have the complete thing. I mean, you could just drag it out of the download it from the safe network and you could have it. It's not like you lost it forever or something. But you would be able to access it just like if you did have the complete file on your computer. Okay. And that's what the safe network was, really supposed to like bring to fruition. Like this is supposed to be as literally as distributed and as decentralized as you could possibly fucking get, to where, you don't even need like massive hard drives or anything anymore. Everything just works on like this collective network of devices. It's a brilliant idea, and one that I was and is still very excited about. However, MaidSafe, I mean, there's other ones that was it Freenode? I think it's no, not Freenode. That's the IRC. Sorry, that's the IRC network. Oh shit, that's terrible. Now I can't think of it. But there's other technologies out there that are kind of doing the same thing. Just nobody uses it because they don't have the unique part of the MaidSafe was that it had a cryptocurrency built into it, SafeCoin, right? That would allow you, that would incentivize you to use the safe network because you could make money off of, doing it. I mean, there's other things involved. There's farms and all of this different stuff. But I mean, the kind of the ability to do this is sort of out there, but not to the level that MaidSafe wanted to do it. And I don't necessarily, bottom line, I'm not excited about MaidSafe really anymore. I question, there's a part of me that even feels, and I could be dead wrong about this, there's a part of me that feels like that switching to the Rust programming language, which I love the Rust programming language. I think it's a brilliant thing. Okay, kudos to Mozilla for, bringing that into fruition. But I almost feel like that might have been a stall tactic to buy more time to say like, oh yeah, we're going to recode everything, blah, 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 but we're going to use this really great language that's going to make it a lot easier, which I'm not saying Rust wouldn't. I don't know. Now, I mean, the fact that as far as I know, they're still using droplets from DigitalOcean and whatever, like I'm beginning to wonder if this kind of ability, like if this is really even possible. Yeah, I mean, it's just that's the point I'm at. And I don't know if the MaidSafe team, and look, I love these people, I really love these people. I don't know. I don't know. It all seems very speculative right now. And I get it that it takes time for, especially for something like this, that is such a gigantic game changer. But yeah, I'm debating whether or not the team there can really deliver on this. That's just my thoughts on it. And the link that was sent to me, maybe I'll pop it in the show notes for this Q&A episode. I mean, the guy brought up some very valid concerns that, yeah, I don't know if this is ever really going to be a thing. I mean, now you can use something like RetroShare, right? Which that doesn't allow for like, I mean, yeah, it does DHT, but it doesn't really allow for where you're not storing entire files on your computer. I mean, like the exciting part about that is that, like, say somebody wants to get after you with copyright law. Look, if you don't hold an entire movie file or MP3 or whatever on your hard drive, what the fuck can they sue you for? What can they go after you for? If it's just all on this, kind of safe network, and MaidSafe isn't like actually maintaining it in any kind of centralized way, they can't go after anybody. I mean, that's so exciting. That's one of the freeing aspects of it. As for with RetroShare is awesome. I'm signed up on it. In fact, there was a post made in the community section on the Patreon page where I put my key there. If you want to add me into RetroShare, I'm already chatting away with patrons on that. That's good. That's going to be a patron perk, is the RetroShare network. And one of the Sovereign Tech patrons is actually set up to where you could download Babylon 5 and all this different stuff, But understand that a lot of that has to be kept on a singular machine, and so RetroShare isn't allowing for that distribution of the data bits, but RetroShare is still great. And it's probably next to having MaidSafe, I would say that RetroShare is probably the best technology out there for right now for creating a completely alternative World Wide Web. Well, really not a completely alternative internet. I don't mean the internet infrastructure, like all the wires and the fiber and everything, but I mean as far as like what makes up the internet, SMTP, the World Wide Web, etc. Or Usenet or something, or even IRC. Like, I mean, you can replace IRC functionality within RetroShare. RetroShare is easily the best thing going. It's near criminal how little exposure RetroShare gets, because it is so fucking well done, and it is such an important technology, and it's so cool what it can do. somehow I'll find it. I've been talking about it for years. Like I've been on top of it for so long. Somehow I got to figure out how to get people, to jump on board with it. Maybe I'll make like an ad for RetroShare and I'll play it in the episodes or something. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, MaidSafe. Yep. My concerns are there's the possibility that this isn't possible, to do this sort of thing. But my bigger concerns is that, yeah, maybe the development team just doesn't have the chops, to make it happen. And maybe they're running out of money. Maybe they don't have enough runway to make it happen, which is kind of a shame. And I know there was some funny business with the ICO, not on MaidSafe's part, on other people that handled the ICO, which is very unfortunate that happened that way. I don't blame MaidSafe for that one. There's some real concerns out there. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. I'm not bullish on MaidSafe whatsoever. Right now. So take that for what you want. Let's see. Let's go to, the Dash question. Do you have any thoughts on Dash? I can guess you're not particularly a fan of it since you haven't talked about it recently, but is that just because you don't like the implementation or something more nefarious that you think is occurring? I don't have I know there's people that have huge issues with Dash and they think that Dash is like some kind of scam, like overall, some kind of like crazy long-term scam. I'm sensitive to those kind of, because to those kind of arguments, because I think that in the blockchain space, it behooves you to automatically assume any new blockchain technology is a scam. Like that is absolutely the default position you should have when you're looking at any blockchain technology, especially ones that kind of do ICOs, even though that Dash didn't really do an ICO. I've talked about in the past, the reason I never got excited about Dash is back when it was Darkcoin, it had a list of goals it was trying to reach, like trying to be like GPU resistant, a bunch of different stuff. And it was failing all of them inside of like a very short period of time. And so I just didn't have any confidence in the coding team there. But now Dash is like a legit thing. I really don't have any like major issue with it. I don't get excited about it because the technology is based on is so vastly inferior to zero knowledge proofs. I mean, vastly inferior. In fact, I think Dash knows that, and that's why they're going for a larger feature set. And that's another thing too. Like, I mean, that's kind of a problem I have, and that's more of an abstract thing, not really a technical. I mean, it can affect security in the long run, but is that it really seems to be trying to do so much as to where, I mean, and there was a time where I wanted that out of cryptocurrencies like NXT and some others. But now I'm really at the mindset where I want things to be very almost single purpose or, very basic in their implementations and everything. And Dash looks like they're trying to become much more of a platform, which, I mean, it's nowhere near to what Ethereum's trying to do, but I don't know, like that doesn't really excite me so much. I mean, but if that excites somebody, it's a different mindset. You have a different opinion and a different thing that you want out of this sort of thing. I want all of these different currencies to exist. So again, I don't have a huge issue with Dash. The one thing, and this is also not a technical, like Dash hires a lot of people to like advertise for them. I don't have a problem with people advertising for it. I think it's fucking creepy, and I think it is against their best interests to have everybody wearing fucking Dash t-shirts. Like, I really do. Like, it looks cultish. The way that people, like, if Dash wanted to advertise on Sovereign Tech, I'd let them. Absolutely. Yeah, sure, go for it. But like, I'm not going to wear their fucking t-shirt, and I would tell them. As somebody, I mean, I'm an ad, I've been an ad exec in the past. I mean, like, I understand marketing, okay? And I would tell them, no, you don't want to do that. You want to keep this really, really simple, really basic. Do not turn this into some kind of, religious fervor. And I feel like that's a lot of what goes on. That goes on for a lot of cryptocurrencies. Same thing happens with Monero, where like the Monero people, they are all in on Monero. And that seems to be the same thing with Dash, where people seem to be all in on Dash. That's bad. Because you're supporting a monoculture of technology and currency, neither of which you ever fucking want. You just don't want it. I say it all the time, but there it is again. You don't want that. So I get a little worried about the community with Dash as well. It seems It really seems, way too cultish. And I get it. They want their currency to make a ton of money so they can become, Bitcoin billionaires like a lot of people are right now, or millionaires, whatever. But, yeah. So, no, I don't really have a huge problem with it. I just also don't get very excited about it. So I don't talk about it. And I think it's important not to constantly prop up every little technology that comes up. It's hilarious. I've gotten accused by people of being a pump and dumper. That's fucking stupid. I so rarely, in fact, I make it a point not to talk about blockchain shit anymore. I'm not that at all. Zcash genuinely excites me. Bitcoin is genuinely awesome. Litecoin, I've touted Litecoin forever. I've made a couple bad calls in the past. I've always been against Ethereum. There was a time where I was intrigued by BitShares. That didn't last long. NXT I was excited about, and things that are largely out of anybody's control really happened to that. It's where NXT I think could have had a genuinely bright future, but there's that theft that the NXT community reacted properly to, but the rest of the world did not have confidence in it after that fact. Whole slew of ideas, and I know Ethereum might be a big deal in Russia now. Well, I mean. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure Russia's very excited about Ethereum because, what have I always said Ethereum could become? What did I think I said it last week on Sovereign Tech, tyranny of the code. So what a shock that Russia would, and that Putin would shake hands with Vitalik Buterin, right? Wasn't there that picture going around or something? If that's all, on the up and up. Not surprising to me at all. And it actually kind of speaks to just how Ethereum could get used, and maybe I was right on some of that. But regardless, yeah, no real problem with Dash. It just doesn't do anything for me. It's not to me it's an inferior product. That doesn't mean I don't want it to exist. Like I said, I don't want a monoculture. I have a billion inferior products out there. Okay, but yeah, so that's just my thoughts on it. Not saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with it. Okay, why don't we let's get into the more of the philosophical stuff. That's what we have for the rest of the show. We're going to talk a little DeFOO-ing. Woo! But the first one is, and this actually kind of bounced off the question of Dash, even though it was a completely separate question, completely separate topic. And this is obviously in response to the Wonder Woman review, the movie Wonder Woman, that Stephanie and I did. Now, you don't need to have heard that review, and you don't need to have seen Wonder Woman to understand this question and what's going on. So don't worry about that. Don't turn me off. That Stephanie and I did this past Saturday, which a lot of people really, really enjoyed. As far as I know, a lot of people really enjoyed the movie as well. Regardless of how they felt about it. I mean, because let's be clear here. Like I said, I don't think Wonder Woman was this grand feminist movie. Some people make an argument for why they think it was and what they wanted out of it, and they got that. And okay. That's the beauty of art is sometimes you can get, it can be somewhat subjective and you can get, and no, art is not all subjective. I'm sorry. No, it's not. Don't even get me started on that. There is art that is objectively more skillful. It's just objective. Okay. Because talent is something that can be measured in an objective way. So no, art is not entirely subjective. Sorry. Hate to break that to you, but anyway, but there's obviously subjectivity in art as well, certainly. And some people got out of it what they wanted. As I said about Wonder Woman, I said that, look, it's not what I wanted it to be, but it's great but what it is solid. It's excellent. It's great. I really like the movie. I like it a lot. Definitely one of the best superhero movies ever made, in my opinion. Just straight up. We might talk about comic book movies later if we have time. But it's not what I expected, and I don't consider it to be like this feminist insurgent film of any kind. Most feminists are actually complaining about the film. And also keep in mind, feminism, as I said on a recent live Q&A hangout, feminism there's a lot of different types of feminism. There isn't just one. When somebody's just attacking feminism in the abstract, there's a problem there because there's so like, what type of feminism are we talking about? A lot of people, and I'll give them a little bit of credit. A lot of people are like, well, my problem is with third wave feminism. Okay. Maybe you are talking about the entirety of feminism. There's certainly arguments to be made about that. But anyway, let's read the question here. I am interested in some further clarification on the male gaze issue. Now, to understand male gaze, that's male, G-A-Z-E, not gays as in homosexuals, okay? Male gaze. This is a concept that a lot of cinematography, and not just cinematography, but in all kinds of art, that there is an automatic or like an inherent or unconscious bias that how you see the art is through the lens of what a guy wants to see. Like if, like the example I think that Stephanie gave is a great one, where in The Dark Knight Rises, where, you're constantly getting, like the director, obviously Christopher Nolan, is doing shots of Catwoman, played by the gorgeous Anne Hathaway, on her ass, like while she's riding on the motorcycle. And like, it's so gratuitous that it's like constantly on her ass, right? That's male gaze, as to where, like, say if it was Patty Jenkins who directed Wonder Woman, the shot would probably be maybe more of a long shot, just showing her looking badass on, badass as in like in action, not as in like showing her ass, on the motorcycle. And Wonder Woman had this complete lack, and I agree, it did. It had this complete lack of male gaze. Like, I mean, there was no like cameras looking up her, uniform or at her ass or anything like that. It was all like, nope, stick to the action and what's going on. And I thought that was pretty cool. So, just got a RetroShare notification just now. Anyway, so that's what male gaze is. So let's read on with the question a bit here. I agree that it can at least be bad cinematography and in art in general if shots are gratuitously focusing on female anatomy, and that the same can be said if shots are gratuitously focusing on male anatomy. What I was wondering is that, are you and Stephanie in line with that, or is it that there is something objectively bad about female objectification? Basically, my question is, the principle that why am I having a hard time with that word? Objectification is bad per se. The principle that objectification is bad per se, or that only objectification of women is bad, and objectification of men is either neutral, good, or the worst option, in my opinion, that due to history, it should be actively pursued in some sort of male comeuppance, and men shouldn't say anything about it. And then it says, thank you for your consideration. Yeah. So objectification, this is such a huge subject. And I don't know if I could exactly, get to it on all this. The problem with male gaze, wow, yeah. So here's the thing. Like, a lot of these are like brought up traditionally by feminist critics and whatever else. Like, I don't even feel qualified a lot of times to talk about this sort of thing because, like, do I mind seeing Anne Hathaway's ass? No. Right? But do I understand kind of what people are saying is that, wow, we're just constantly treated, women saying we're constantly treated like a piece of meat, right down to the unconscious levels in which we're displayed in art. That's a problem, and that lends itself perhaps to something like rape culture. Now understand, rape culture is about a lot more, okay, than just rape. You have like than just the physical inaction of, or the physical action of rape. Rape culture is about culture in general. And I mean, some people want to apply male gaze kind of to that. Is that, like this is where the idea of, she was asking for it, kind of comes from, because she's dressed like that. Well, it's, why did that person think that way? And that's because in the movies, the way, the women are put on display and whatever else with this male gaze is that, this is the signal that they do want it and everything, right? This is just a massive, massive subject. So I am going to try and address it, but I totally admit to, this is something that could be talked about for hours, and that maybe people that it more affects, kind of become an issue. I mean, like, because one of the arguments that people will bring up is that guys, in general, like that guys, we want to be treated like a piece of meat, right? Blah, 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 blah. Well, no, not every guy wants to be treated like like a piece of meat or something. I would say objectification across the board is generally bad. Now, the real problem here, and I guess maybe this is the best way to kind of answer this, okay? The real problem is that it is so unconscious. One of my favorite directors of all time is Russ Meyer. Okay, Faster Pussycat, Kill Kill. This guy's a legend. Director from the '60s and all that. And he was known for making movies with voluptuous women in it and a lot of gratuitous shit and all this. But you have to understand, people knew what they were getting into. When you watch a Russ Meyer film, you know exactly what it's about. There's a point to what could be considered the objectification. And at that point, it almost doesn't become objectification, it becomes celebration of, say, the female form, or of this campy ridiculousness and things like this. A lot of people think, here's a great example, okay? A lot of people think that the miniskirts in Star Trek, that's objectification of women, that they had to wear that stuff. But the thing is, people take it out of context. You don't understand that the miniskirt in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s, was so rebellious against the status quo. It was not about objectifying women. It was the exact opposite. It was about celebrating women. And for Star Trek to put that on display made total fucking sense. Now that can kind of go full circle to where suddenly, little skirts do become, objectification, right? And then, for say, sticking within Star Trek as an example. And then when you get to, Star Trek Voyager, or whatever else, where women are wearing pants, that is seen as the more rebellious thing at the time. So you got to keep things into, you have to consider context. Just like Russ Meyer's films were, really, really rebellious in that saying, no, we can celebrate women. We can show off women. Fuck your conservatism. Fuck your, you thinking that, you have to understand kind of the boardroom conversations that were had in Hollywood, at the time. Here's another Gene Roddenberry story for you. Gene Roddenberry was making a movie, what was it called, The Quester Tapes? Or it was supposed to be like a TV show or something, which was about this kind of robotic character. It was actually very much, you can tell, that was supposed to be it was a precursor to Commander Data, right? From Star Trek The Next Generation. And this was in the, in the 60s here, in the 70s. And the board, he talked about it. He said, in the executives, in the room, he was talking to all the TV executives and everything for the Quester tapes. And they pretty much all came to the conclusion. They said, no, we're not going to let you go forward with this, because there's a scene where the robot fucks a woman. And, pretty much the answer that the executives came up with is that, do you want to think that your sister or daughter or whatever else got fucked by a robot? And that's why they wouldn't let the Quester tapes go forward. That simple of shit. You see, so there's times where kind of this overt sexuality and what could be perceived as objectification is actually the really rebellious anti-status quo, anti-establishment action, right? And or that it's not even about objectification, it's about celebration. So the problem with male gaze is, and look, I know this is tough. It's to want to consider it and to think about it. All I can say is that for me as a guy, when I read a lot of these feminist critiques and everything, and I got a ton of questions about feminism this week after the Wonder Woman review. This is just one of many. And I've gotten them in the past too, and that's fine. I don't think I'm going to get to them right here. And like I said, I don't 100% feel qualified even really to, because a lot of them don't affect me. But speaking of the don't affect me, I read about the concept of male gaze, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, I get it. And then suddenly, and I can watch a movie and I can instantly recognize. Stephanie and I took her to see The Dark Knight Rises, and we watched it. And as soon as I saw that scene with the motorcycle, I'm like, oh, come on. Like, I know what you're doing. And I knew it was the concept of male gaze. So, like, I think a lot of people are like, well, how do I know? How can I follow the rules? How do I pay attention to the signals and all that? Look, I don't know. Okay, I read the critiques and I completely understand what they're saying. And somehow, me as a guy, just speaking conventionally, I don't buy into this shit. Okay, but just speaking conventionally, somehow I am a big guy. I'm a, and I've had people say this to me. I am a man's man. You understand? But somehow none of this bothers me or offends me. And that's one of the biggest things about a lot of feminist critiques. It's just like, or critiques, not feminist critiques. Feminist critiques are critiques that feminists make. Critiques of feminism, which is critiques of feminists, right? A lot of critiques of feminism, like, or concerns over the complaints that feminists make, blah blah blah. Like, I don't understand what is the outcome that what is this terrible dystopian future that everybody's expecting to happen? Like, I read their points and I'm like, oh yeah, I get what you're saying, and I go forward, and it doesn't change a thing about me. like it doesn't bother my masculinity. It doesn't bother like any aspect of me. I'm not saying the emailer's doing that. I know the emailer, great guy, okay? And his point is genuine intellectual inquiry, okay? But I'm just saying, I don't understand where all these fucking complaints come from. Like that this is causing this, and people saying they can't keep track of, how they're supposed to react to this or react to that. I don't get what's so hard about it. You read about it and it's like, okay, I got it. And then suddenly you have, this is just another lens that you add to your, to your mind's eye, and that you can see things for what they are. So I'm not sure how I got on that tangent. but anyway, the problem is when it's seen as being unconscious. No one's saying you can't be sexy on film. No one's saying men or women can't be sexy on film or on screen or, in a comic book or whatever. You totally can. And you can make it a point to where things are designed to be overt and over the top and ridiculous. And you could even have, here's the thing, you could even have that same scene with Catwoman, right? On the motorcycle, showing her ass. You could put that, like, say, in a Russ Meyer film. And guess what? And I don't know why this is a hard thing to consider, or why this is a hard concept to understand. But really, it's not objectification anymore. Okay? Like, that's not male gaze anymore. It's quite the opposite. In fact, honestly, like, you can make things, a lot of women are bisexual, right? Well, a lot of people, in general, not just women, men, a lot of people are bisexual. So, is it male gaze then? Yeah, as far as with like the Catwoman scene, yeah, it still is, because the idea is that objectification of women. I know I'm probably making a mess of all this, but no, yeah, the real problem is that no, I really don't want objectification across the board, man or woman. Like that just doesn't need to be, unless, again, understand, unless it's meant to be that way. Right? Like, unless, not to be objectifying, but instead it's like, that the film is all about, say, celebration or being campy or something like this. But when it's serious as a heart attack, like The Dark Knight Rises was, yeah, that's like unconscious objectification, and it's fucking annoying, and it's insulting to anybody involved. Should the actors walk away and say, oh shit, I'm not doing that? Well, they don't always know. Because a lot of the stuff gets done in the editing room. A lot of times you have 2-3 cameras set up and you have 2-3 different angles, and you never know which one they're going to use. And you also have the bean counters. You have the boardroom execs that walk in and say, oh no, you show her ass, and things like this. Especially when it comes to making film, like, it's so tough for one individual to have any idea of what's really going on. The way a script is, movies get made in the editing room, and actors have no control of what's in the editing room. They can say later on, maybe they could put in their contract that they get to see the film before it gets released or something. But I guarantee you, and I know there's been actors that have done that, they don't get movie roles anymore because no one wants to deal with that shit. To where they would pay millions of dollars in the editing room and then find out you need to fucking change it, because some actor didn't like something that happened. I'm not saying I don't understand why the actor would do that. Of course I understand why they do that. But, you're not going to get hired if that's the way you're thinking. So, I'm not mad at Anne Hathaway for not sticking up for herself as a woman, saying you're objectifying me, motherfucker. Or maybe, and this is something else to consider, maybe she likes that. And we know Anne Hathaway's, kind of a sexual freak. And I say that with, I say that with endearment. I don't say that with, as derogatory, right? So maybe she's into that. Maybe she wanted that shot. Those are things to consider. But there is a real problem of continual sexual objectification, and it's being done unconsciously. It's not part of the script. It may not really even belong there. I have a huge problem where sexuality and violence are constantly being put on display together. That's a cultural trope that just needs to fucking go away. Let sex be sex without having it be some kind of reaction to violence. One of my favorite shows of all time, Spartacus, does that nonstop. There's fortunately it's like 3/4 sex, 1/4 violence, but it's still like, it seems like they just have to do that. They can't let things just be sexy. They got to toss in some violence quick, which I think that creates a very, very strange cultural picture and can create very strange associations in the human mind that are a real issue. So, the principle of objectification is bad, like out of the gate. And I think Stephanie would agree with that. That it doesn't need to be either way. Men don't need to be. This is, here's another thing to understand about feminism. And this is largely, again, bunch of different types of feminism. Most types of feminism, though, would tell you that, the patriarchy, the great enemy, hurts men as much as it hurts women, because it expects men to be such and such, either the disposable male or, the big muscular guy and all this different stuff. Not that you can't take on the big muscular guy as like a positive attribute or anything, but that it becomes a societal expectation of you to for men to fill in those roles. Okay. So most feminists would also say that, yes, male objectification is bad. It's bad across the board. Just stop objectifying people. Let them be known for their brain, right? Which a lot of art is an intellectual exercise. And so, that's okay. But again, understand that all of this can be turned right upside down if it's being done with the purpose of celebration, right? Like a Russ Meyer film, or something else. So, it gets called male gaze because largely it's being done by male directors, male cinematographers, male artists, you can even kind of get male gaze in writing, like, in a novel that can sort of be a thing, believe it or not. But it's just paying attention to that. Like, is the purpose, what's the purpose of what you're seeing or reading or whatever? Is there a good reason to have the shot kind of be like that? And you could say, well, the good reason is to sell tickets because you get to see Anne Hathaway's ass or something. Sure, you can think that way, but doesn't that speak something kind of strange about culture in general? And look, obviously I'm not a prude. That's the last thing I think anybody would ever call Brian Sovereign. But yeah, I get it. And I don't think it's hard to see these things. I don't think it's hard to know when they're happening and all this stuff. It's just like They Live, right? Where, Roddy Piper puts on the sunglasses and suddenly he sees what all the ads are really saying, and I think when you read about this stuff with an open mind, not with just this attitude of, feminism bad, you start to see exactly what they're talking about. Now, I just want to speak quickly on this. As far as like, you see this, okay, let's see in movies, you're seeing male gaze become like, suddenly you understand male gaze and you're like, wow, this is fucking everywhere. Obviously, if somebody wants to like make a federal regulation or a state regulation of some kind or whatever, saying that you can't allow for this in movies anymore, I'm not going to support that. Most of the feminists I know, they're not going to support that kind of bullshit either. Okay, but just because it's such that, with a lot of these different social justice issues, which you might want to chalk male gaze up to, just because you disagree with what a lot of people that try to highlight these social justice issues, let's say, just because they want to use the state and you disagree with using the state, which of course I do, to enforce against these things, it doesn't mean that it's not really a problem. I think a huge problem that happens, especially with people that are, anti-feminism or anti-social justice and all this, is that, they're like, well, they want to use the state, and so they write off the entire argument. When maybe there's validity to the argument, it's just the solution that people want to fix the argument is anti-ethical and antithetical to actually solving it. I shouldn't say anti-ethical, but unethical, right? Because using the state is unethical, like in its very existence, right? But I think I see that as the amount of emails I got about the Wonder Woman review. I mean, I don't know when I'm going to get to them, and I think I'd like to have guests on really to talk about it. But I really, folks, understand, using the state is wrong, but that doesn't make their arguments invalid just because their solution is to use the state. They might still have a point. Anarchists are too quick to just write shit off because the solution is the state. That doesn't mean that there isn't a problem just because the solution is totally unethical and immoral. So anyway, I hope that answered that. And it can be a fine line sometimes between what is objectification and what's celebration. But I don't think it's hard to differentiate. I don't think I really don't. Kind of between the two. So, and certainly, depending on somebody's mindset can change a whole lot of things into a whole lot of different ways. So, there's some subjectivity, inside all of that. We talked about this with Wonder Woman. Like, a lot of people think that all the bondage in Wonder Woman comics is like, it's anti-women, like it's misogyny because she's constantly being bound. When actually, if you understand the creation of Wonder Woman, if you understand the history of Wonder Woman in the real world, not the fictional history, or the fictional creation, but like the real creation, the real history of Wonder Woman, you'd understand that it's actually a celebration of a lifestyle that the creators practiced, that being BDSM. Okay, so it was in there, to make a point. It wasn't in there to tie up women, and say women are inferior or something like this, or as, I guess it's kind of a sex fantasy, but it's not like objectification, right? Once you understand the context of what's going on here. And so context is it's everything. And yes, it can be hard sometimes to find context. I do get that. We're going to talk about that more in just a minute, about context with comic book movies in particular. But yeah, I hope what I said wasn't too confusing or anything. You can pare down your questions if you want as well, even more, and I'm happy to get to it. So okay, let's see. I want to get to another. This was actually it was on Twitter. Very simple question. What are your thoughts on DeFOO-ing? Woo, there's a hot topic right there. And kind of an older one in Liberty circles. So DeFOO-ing is FOO, F-O-O. It stands for family of origin. And it is this term that is commonly used in the Free Domain radio community. I'm not saying it's the only place, but anyway, family of origin. And DeFOO-ing means getting away from and like getting out of your life entirely. You don't talk to them anymore. I'm being very basic in my description here. Getting rid of your family of origin. Stefan Molyneux has been a major supporter of this for a long, long time. I've had friends in the past who totally DeFOO'd, to where they don't talk to their, and you do it, like, it's not like, oh, I just need to get away from my parents or something. The idea is that your parents may have been so traumatic and so terrible to you as a child, whether they, were consciously or unconsciously, unconsciously as in they were repeating traumas from their own childhood. If they were, affecting you, and that you just, they're not making, and when you talk to them about it, they don't want to make any kind of amends. They don't want to empathize with you and perhaps work with you through your trauma that they inflicted, and maybe even like after effect, get through their traumas as well as parents. Some people see DeFOO-ing as like a very cultish act. Okay. All right, let me backtrack here. So DeFOO-ing itself, like, are there times where you need to completely, like, mentally and in the real world, like, write off your family? like your nuclear family that you came from, and say, look, I can't talk to you people anymore. I'm not going to do this. We're not on the same path, blah, blah, blah. That's a totally valid thing to do. Of course it is. Absolutely. I didn't know what DeFOO-ing was, but that's what I did. When I moved to New Hampshire, like I just had to cut my entire family off. For a slew of reasons, and I consider them to be very legitimate. I mean, I could go down the fucking list, but I think that's getting a little too personal for right here. That's a whole other conversation maybe for another time. I'm not afraid to share about it, but anyway, we don't need to spend another hour talking about, my family life or my ex-family life, I guess you could say. But I was going through a divorce. There's a lot packed in that. So anyway, yeah, I don't talk to my parents anymore. I don't talk to my siblings. I don't talk to, anybody in my family anymore. And so, because it's key to happiness in my life, bottom line. And for me to be able to grow, and so, yeah, obviously I don't have a problem with DeFOO-ing. I think it's a fine and dandy thing. I think there's points where absolutely it needs to be done. Now, the accusation that it's a cultish thing to do, I'll admit that I've had people tell me that I've known people that that I've respected here and there, some not, admittedly, but that they DeFOO'd, and they would have the conversation with me and they would talk about it. And, in my opinion, and again, I'm only basing it off of what somebody's told me. There could be so much more that they don't tell. Speaking of, like, we talked a little bit about rape culture earlier. Maybe it wasn't even fruitful to bring that up. But, a lot of people say, well, we don't really have a rape culture. Well, let me tell you something. Child molestation is so commonplace. Just anecdotally, in my opinion, it's so commonplace, especially in the United States. I respect and I don't blame a single human being for not wanting to talk about it. Like they don't want to tell you about that. Okay. And maybe that was something that happened. Maybe the person who DeFOO'd, got away from their family, either consciously didn't want to talk about it or unconsciously knew it was happening. And that just kind of like would color a lot of what would otherwise seem to be very, very mundane things that their parents had done to them that they decided to DeFOO for. So I'm open to that. I want to be sensitive to that. Okay. This is serious shit, but I have had people based upon what they've told me where I'm like, no, like, yeah, that's not all right that your parents did that, but that's a pretty small pittance to be saying, I'm never going to fucking talk to you again. And you son of a bitch, I'm going to write a terrible, letter to you, blah, blah, blah. Where I go, yeah, I think you're taking this a little too far. And another thing that happens is that when you have kind of a community, I'm not talking about any particular community. It could be all kinds of different communities. Okay. When you have a community where the concept of, say, DeFOO-ing, whether it's called DeFOO-ing in that community or not, when that's considered the cool thing to do, people are more likely to do it when it's not needed, and it may even be harmful. There's another, Jake DeSillis of The Voluntary Life, one of my favorite podcasts. He did an episode where he talked about this, where, like when really young people are being told to DeFOO, like real, like teenagers or, pre-20, maybe even early 20s or something like that, when they don't have like a social net in which to, hopefully either build themselves up entrepreneurially or in some other way, having them DeFOO, you're creating a generation of homeless people that are just mad at the world, and they're going to start, these aren't my words, and I'm paraphrasing, so if I misquoted Jake, who I consider a good friend, I apologize. But I think his point is sound, like that's, if your parents are beating you, of course you got to fucking get away, money be damned. It's such a complex subject. Okay. But so I guess that just, it's just be careful with that. All right. That can be taken too far. And when something like DeFOO-ing can be considered like this is like it's some kind of rite of passage, that's a problem. But DeFOO-ing itself is absolutely legitimate. I think, like I said, I've done it. I have DeFOO'd. Again, I didn't call it that. I didn't know that that's what it was. It's just what I knew I needed to do to be able to survive. and to be happy, which is the point of life. So I did it. So yeah, I have absolutely no problem with DeFOO-ing. However, that comes with caveats that I think there can be, like, the concept of DeFOO-ing can become harmful. It can. I'm not saying it is inherently. I'm saying it can be, and those are things to watch out for. And also keep in mind, we don't know everybody's story. No one can ever really know another person's story all the way. You just can't. There can be enough things to where you can say, yeah, no, I think that's totally justified. I think, and again, it all comes down to the individual. Do you even need a reason necessarily to DeFOO? No. You can just choose to. It's like, because, family can kind of suck, right? Like, it's not a chosen group of people in your life. It's not like friends where you choose your friends. It's sort of an odd, unchosen obligation in life. That is a very odd thing. So you don't really need a good reason to walk away from them. I think claiming that my point where DeFOO-ing is where someone says that they DeFOO'd, like, sometimes the reasons they give, I think are kind of outlandish. Like, I think that they're going way, way too far. So yeah, if you want to DeFOO, yeah, go ahead and just DeFOO. You don't have to have a good reason for that, and if your parents love you, they really, as stewards, they should just be like, oh, well, okay. I understand they might want in the life in their, they might want you in their life, but they should also respect your choices, across the board as good stewards, of your life. And if you ever need them or want to talk to them again, then they can be a part of it again, But I think some of the justifications that I hear at times, like, people would be better off, just don't justify it. Because, like, I really think you're really, really stretching. What's the term? What's the phrase I'm looking for? Yeah, I think the reasons being given are, just don't give a reason, because the reasons you're giving aren't really reasons. They're you're just kind of like stretching things to kind of fit like the life narrative that you want, and I don't dig it. So, okay. Yeah, that's DeFOO-ing. No, I have no problem. I think it's a concept that is worth talking about, describing, maybe even having a book about out there, blah, blah, blah. No issue from me. So there you go. Other than what I described, where it can be used in, it has the potential to be, like, the concept itself has the potential to be abused to where things can become maybe cultish or ultimately harmful to the individual when they think that the concept that they're enacting is something that's actually helpful, and it might not be. So there you go. Okay, let's see. We've got a little bit of time left. Oh man, I have one more question. I don't want to end on that fucking note. So let's get to our last question. Maybe I won't spend a ton of time on this. It's not a question that requires it. So you talk a lot about comic book movies, which, yes, I do. I do reviews of a lot of comic book movies on Patreon itself. You don't have to listen to them, okay? Just because I release something on Patreon does not mean you have to listen to all of it to get it, Anyway, should I get into them if I don't read comic books? It seems like you need a lot of understanding of the history to get them. And then there's some more. Well, yeah. I think that's the basic gist. Okay, no. In fact, honestly, like, most, especially modern comic book movies, I mean, Wonder Woman was great, and like a movie like Iron Man was genuinely great. But most comic book movies, and understand also, Wonder Woman and Iron Man, like those two movies, two different universes, Marvel, DC. Okay, They could stand on their own. They don't need, that's one of the beautiful things especially about the original Iron Man film, is that it doesn't need the Marvel Cinematic Universe for it to make sense. Wonder Woman does not either. It really doesn't. I'd love to see an Ultimate Edition of Wonder Woman where maybe they put in some of the scenes from like Batman v Superman to give a little more context to her opening scene and ending scene, but in the Wonder Woman standalone film. But it's a standalone film. It could, no matter what Justice League does or anything, and no matter what other movies Gal Gadot's in, she could, like that movie could stand alone for all time. So anyway, the point I was going to make is that, yeah, there's a couple like Wonder Woman or Iron Man. Doctor Strange was pretty good, though And that's also kind of a standalone film. Though Doctor Strange, like the reason that was good was because like the visual style was so unique. It's not like anything else, at least in my opinion, outside of maybe the works of Alejandro Jodorowsky that I've ever seen like in any other film. And so that's what kind of made that cool. It's not because the story's great. The story's not actually even that great. But, you know, the acting's great, but whatever. Anyway, so point being that I was getting at is that most modern superhero movies suck. Like they really suck. I don't mind that they're interconnected at all. In fact, I think that's kind of cool, but their interconnectedness also seems to be an odd weakness in that you're never going to have these characters die because, you know, you're franchising these people. I mean, in comic books, it's just as bad, admittedly. Like, they'll kill off a character. They'll kill off Captain America. He'll be back next year. You know, they'll kill off Superman. He'll be back next year. They'll kill off Green Lantern. He'll be back in 5 years. You know, I mean, like, nobody ever really seems to die in comic books anyway. But there's this constant appeal to the widest demographics possible with comic book movies. Wonder Woman is no exception to this. You know, so you're expecting a lot of kids to come in there. They're not going to kill off major characters. They're just not. But overall, like I said, comic book movies really do suck. Like, yeah, Captain America Civil War was pretty good, but it wasn't like, I didn't understand why that movie, why people thought that one was that great. The only good thing in that was Black Panther. So, you know, you can see comic book movies with two sets of eyes. Okay, you can see it as a comic book fan with like you have a ton of comic book knowledge, or you can just see it as somebody that doesn't know anything about comic books, and you kind of go in and, you know, you check it out, and, you know, maybe you like it, maybe you dig the action, and maybe you don't. But I think like Captain America Civil War, like that was cool because I know about the character of Black Panther, one of my favorite comic book characters. And so to finally see him, like, really put that movie on for me. Otherwise, I thought the movie was kind of boring. Like, objectively, especially Marvel's movies, and look, I'm not saying anything, like, Suicide Squad was fucking terrible. The original version of Batman v Superman, not the Ultimate Edition, was pretty rough shit. You know, I'm not, like, praising the modern DC movies in any way, shape, or form. Okay, but the Marvel movies in particular today are terrible. They're objectively... The villains are not developed. The villains suck. Okay, which is one of the great things about comic books is usually it gives you the time to give depth to the villains as well as the heroes, which is what creates such long-lasting and memorable stories, is when everybody has so much depth to their character. Okay, the movies are terrible about that. So you have no real great motivations for the villains in these things. The music is usually very subpar. I haven't heard a great Marvel soundtrack. Well, maybe the first Iron Man. That was a cool soundtrack. I dug that. But otherwise, you don't hear great. In fact, that was by that Ramin. I forget the rest of his name, but he also did the soundtrack for Westworld. But I mean, like, there's so much wrong with these movies. There is a lack of dramatic depth that you just don't get. I mean, these are really bad films, whether you're a comic book fan or not. Being a comic book fan can enhance the movie to some degree because you're getting to see certain things come to life finally, but then also it can make them bad films when they stray from kind of the fidelity of the source material. Okay, or, you know, when they don't pay fidelity to the source material, when they stray from the continuity that you've maybe grown up with and loved for, you know, 36 years or something, right? Or 30 years. So, yeah. You don't have to read comic books to get comic book movies. But then at the same time, like I think unless you're a child, and there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, I think these movies are terrible. They're so boring. They're so formulaic. And the formula also has nothing really to offer other than, you know, just a shit ton of like action and violence and whatever else. I mean, you could say that Captain America has some great quotes in some of his movies, you know, and yeah, that's nice, you know, but if I want fucking great quotes, I mean, there's a billion books and a lot of other movies and shows that I could watch that would do a lot more for me, you know, for my little inner anarchist. Okay. So you know, that doesn't really excite me, you know, that Captain America says something really amazing. So yeah, comic book movies overall, like especially if you've never read comics, don't bother with the movies. I don't think there's anything really to get out of them. I think they're shit. You know, Wonder Woman would be I mean, not all comic book movies. I'm talking about modern ones. I'm sorry. Okay, for example, so like Wonder Woman is one where I think it bucks the trend. I think Man of Steel is a great movie as well. I know not everybody agrees with that. I think Iron Man and Iron Man 2 is good as well. But Iron Man in particular was a great movie. In fact, Iron Man 1, that movie kicked off everything that's going on in comic book movies right now. Like, I mean, it totally, you know, this is it. And at least with Iron Man, like, you had some background for the villain. Like, you know, Jeff Bridges did just a top-notch job with that. But, you know, previous to that, like, I mean, the Batman, like Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, despite everything we were talking about with male gaze, those are genuinely great movies. Particularly Batman Begins, I think, is the best one. I love that movie. The original Superman films, fantastic, you know, with Christopher Reeves. I mean, some people don't like 3 or 4. That's fine. I can appreciate that. But certainly 1 and 2 by Richard Donner were I mean, the first, I've said this before, the first Superman movie is often considered, from 78, is often considered the last American classic. Like, you know, there's classic films, then there's sort of, you know, like, then you get into like maybe 70s, 80s films or you know, more 80s films and things like this. But like the classic era of films stopped with Superman. You know, the 78 Superman. That's where, because what happened is that Superman made everything look so legit. Like one of the taglines for the 78 Superman was, you will believe a man can fly. Yep, you believed it. They made it look that good. No CGI. They made it look like Superman was flying. Remarkable film. I mean, just perfect. It is a perfect movie. The John Williams score, Christopher Reeves, you wouldn't think he could pull off a Superman. He pulls it off. Marlon Brando brings so much epicness to the character of Jor-El. The villains in it. Lex Luthor, you know, I mean, it's fucking Gene Hackman. Come on, it's Gene Hackman. You know, I mean, it's perfect. Superman 2, I think is not as good, but it's still you know, they made Superman 1 and Superman 2 at the same time. Richard Donner was making the both. But I think Superman 2 is very good. The Richard Donner cut, I like a lot. I mean, the quote with, you know, Terrence Stamp playing General Zod, amazing. Sarah Douglas playing another one of kind of the Kryptonian villains. She was just, I mean, so sexy for all the reasons a woman should be sexy, for the power, for the great lines, you know, all these different things. I mean, Sarah Douglas, what a tremendous actress, you know, especially like Conan the Destroyer and all that. She could deliver, man, she could deliver. Anyway, but, you know, Terrence Stamp's classic line, you know, "Come, son of Jor-El, kneel before Zod." I mean, like, awesome, you know? So the classic superhero movies, I think, offer a lot more than anything the modern movies bring on. Like, the modern movies are such shit. I review for like the DC animated universe, I review every animated movie that DC releases now on Patreon, because I think those are genuinely very good. I don't think, and most of those are some kind of an origin story. Like the 2009 Wonder Woman animated movie is, in my opinion, leaps and bounds better than the Wonder Woman that's out now that everybody's talking about. But, you know, I mean, that almost got an R rating. I mean, it was that intense. But a lot of those are often origin stories, and it's a great way to get introduced to the characters and all this. I think those you can kind of watch on your own. But again, with the animated movies, I don't think you need to have any kind of real comic book knowledge. I mean, most people know Batman shtick. You know Superman shtick. You know Wonder Woman shtick. We don't need all these origin stories, but oftentimes they'll still deliver them, and it can be interesting when it's done right. I mean, the first Superman movie is an origin story done right. Batman Begins is an origin story done right. You know, not all of these origin stories are done right, especially when it comes to Marvel. Most of them are not. So, I mean, really, how many different, you know, there's another one. Okay, I was just about to say, how many different Spider-Man movies do we need? Seriously. I mean, it's fucking annoying as hell. I thought that, was that 98 when Spider-Man came out? The first Spider-Man with Seabiscuit there, Tobey Maguire. I thought that movie was incredible. I really liked It's the first Spider-Man movie. Like that spoke to me in so many, and I'm not a Spider-Man fan at all. I mean, I know Spider-Man. I read the McFarlane run. I know the deal. Okay. I mean, I read all kinds of runs. I read Straczynski's run with Spider-Man. I mean, I know the character intimately, but I'm not a Spider-Man fan. But that movie was solid. And I think every Spider-Man film has gone downhill since. I mean, I like Spider-Man 2. I even kind of like Spider-Man 3. But Spider-Man 1, whoo, that's a great one. So, and then there's the X-Men movies, but they stand on their own. They're their own little universe. There's certainly a lot of joy to be taken from those. I mean, I could talk about that forever, but you don't need to know anything about the X-Men to get that. That's another one where, like, a lot of these comic book characters, the big ones, are such a part of our cultural lexicon that, I mean, you don't need to read comic books at all, really to get what's happening on screen. So no, you don't have to read comic books to watch them, but then I would also challenge and say, by and large, at least out of the modern ones that are coming out now, you don't need to see them. You don't, like, they're not even great movies. They're shit. Every Avengers movie has been largely terrible. The Captain America movies have been terrible. Ant-Man, what the fuck? I mean, you kind of go down the list. I think they're all boring and they're formulaic, and nothing of any real substance is ever going to happen in these movies. They're just not. Guardians of the Galaxy, those are good. Yep, those are good. But they were kind of standing on their own as well. They're not going to anymore because it's such a big property. But like the first Guardians of the Galaxy, that was a rock solid movie. So yeah, but you don't, with Guardians of the Galaxy, like, most comic book fans don't know shit about Guardians of the Galaxy. They really don't. Okay, so yeah, you could enjoy that without seeing, without reading comic books and all that. So you don't need the history, but then, like I said, one more time, you really don't need to watch them. There's other movies I would watch. I mean, I could think of a billion movies I'd watch before I'd watch another Marvel film. Really. It just doesn't, Iron Man, Guardians, I don't know, otherwise they don't really hold up for me. There's some stuff from the past, like past Marvel films. Like I said, Spider-Man. I love the original David Hasselhoff, Nick Fury. Yeah, David Hasselhoff played Nick Fury in the 90s. It was great. A lot of those, yeah, I could dig that. But that's really when people think superhero films and comic book films, they're thinking all the modern MCU and even what the DCU is trying to do. And most of that's shit, So, which is ironic, and I get it. I want to end off with this. It's ironic that, like, so in the DCEU, how many movies do we have? There's Man of Steel, which kicked it off. Then there's Batman v Superman. Then there's Suicide Squad, and then there's Wonder Woman. So you only have 4 movies. Now there's genuine concerns coming up. In fact, there's apparently a bunch of, like, Joss Whedon took over production of Justice League from Zack Snyder because Zack Snyder's daughter died. I don't know all the details around that. And apparently there's a lot of reshoots going on. So Justice League looks like it might end up being a completely different movie than what was originally planned, and probably than what you're seeing in the trailer when it comes out in, like, November, which is amazing. the tight schedules these things get made with, today, where it used to take years and years and years. But yeah, I mean, you have 4 movies there, right? Like I said, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, and Wonder Woman. Even if you don't count the Ultimate Edition, which I would say is a good movie of Batman v Superman, you hit, like, it's 2 for 2. To say that the DCEU sucks, no, you have 2 great movies there. You have Man of Steel and you have Wonder Woman. Like, those are great movies. And then you have 2 that, yeah, are questionable, or, I mean, if you count the Ultimate Edition, like I said, I think it's a good film. So really you have, out of 4 movies, let's say you can count the Ultimate Edition, you've got 3 out of 4 great movies. What the fuck are people talking about that the DCEU sucks? And I'm not playing DC fanboy, even though, yes, I readily admit that I like DC way more than I like Marvel, by a long shot. But still, I think Marvel's track record's far worse because they put out 2 superhero movies a year, and most of them are bad. so I don't quite get people's argument that all the DC EU sucks or anything. I mean, I can get it. I can kind of understand it, especially if somebody doesn't like Man of Steel, and there's some genuine critiques to make against Man of Steel. But I still think that was an awesome movie. I mean, the music, the scenes on Krypton alone were so worth it. But whatever. Anyway, That's it. Enough shit. We've talked about. We went into some deep subjects. I hope I made sense in what I was saying. Like I said, potentially next Thursday, the 15th, I believe that'll be. We might be doing our live Q&A hangout again for June. We're going to do one for June either way. It's just when. And right now, that's what it's looking at. So that's enough for me. Have some more stuff out this week for you as well. Maybe comic book stuff related. And I will see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.